Welcome to Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. My name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. Our objective is to enthuse, inspire, energize, and empower entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs of all stripes here in BW and beyond. We do so by inviting these entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs into our makeshift studio. Sometimes we call them to the restaurant, sometimes we go to our studio, and we ask them to share their experiential knowledge, their experiences and their expertise, and we ask them as many questions as we can, aimed at empowering you also as a viewer. Hello dear viewer, dear listener, my name is Mompoloki Lerumo Mogobe. I welcome you once again to another invigorating and fascinating episode of Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom podcast. I brought in an engineer. He's not a first-time guest, it's actually his second visit, Mr. Fred Maunze. Welcome to the studio.
Hi, Mr. Mogobe. How are you? Thank you for having me again.
Yeah,
it's good to be here.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Some people may not know you in terms of your background and what you do. You're a fellow angel investor and that sort of thing. Okay. But here's your opportunity to reintroduce yourself to the viewing audience.
Okay, so as a first and foremost note, I'm more of a business person in terms of seeking business opportunities, and then in terms of engineering, it's not engineering by a school; it's engineering by actually learning along the ways. So we come from a family of engineers. Then obviously we then ventured into a business that focuses on industrial engineering, machinery and things like that. So I've basically over the last 5, 6, 7 years been learning. A lot of the practices.
Learning and applying.
Exactly, learning and applying a lot of the practices in order to be able to assist, people in the market in Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe, and Zambia.
So, what would be your formal academic or vocational training?
In terms of full-on academics, it would be computer science and finance. That's my full-on training from school.
Okay.
But for me, I didn't see the vision in future in that.
Yeah.
Although they say finance and money, but I said no. Let's get into business.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you pivoted a little bit to engineering.
Yeah, exactly.
Now let's talk about why we're here. We're going to talk about manufacturing business.
Yes.
I'm very, very fascinated about manufacturing and food production, manufacturing in particular, because we just launched the Africa Intercontinental Trade Agreement, where we want to make eventually Africa one of the big African Union, similar to European Union, etc. Common customs union and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So we need to be now part of the value chain.
Yes.
For too long, we've been, in the front and end side.
Yes. Yeah.
Front in the sense that we come with raw products, which we sell, and then end side in the sense that we become consumers.
Yes.
So there's a whole value chain in the middle that we want to be part of, which you are a part of, which you want to discuss. Manufacturing business, how to, and focus on food production. For you, what is the impetus? Why manufacturing? Why food production?
Okay, so I'll just look at sometime last year or the year before, we had a hackathon where we actually drew the triangle specifically of Botswana.
Hackathon, eh?
Yes. So we drew a triangle of Botswana, and we then said what's happening is you find that agriculture and mining sectors, so our triangles are supposed to be, the normal way you'd see a triangle standing, but in Botswana it's upside down, in the sense that we've got agriculture and mining with a small section, and then thereafter you've got things like government and mining and other sectors that are dominating employment, GDP and things like that. So which means the economy is at risk. If anything ever goes wrong with these sectors, then we're then in trouble. So it's time that we now focus on manufacturing and agricultural sectors specifically, and obviously food production being an important one because it creates food security in Botswana, and then the region thereafter. Then we have a fat bottom of the triangle, and then a thinner side at the top. At least if ever there's any trouble, whether it's with COVID times and things like this, the economy is not as shaken. It does suffer, but it's not as shaken. Yeah, so this is why I have a big passion for the manufacturing sector across the board, and then obviously food as a key focus.
Okay, just your company, what is the setup currently? What do you actually do?
Okay, so our company, the one I'll speak about predominantly today, we support manufacturing entities. So if you're manufacturing anything, whether it's bread, milk, food, yogurt, you name it, anything you can think of, soap, chemicals, the whole 9 yards, we can supply you with the machinery that you can use to run all your production processes. We can run you through a bit of training in terms of knowing what you actually need to implement systems in your company. We also then provide obviously local service and support for that machinery, because that's one of the most important elements. Buying machinery is one thing. Do you have the technical support to actually maintain that machinery when it's here? During breakdowns, you don't want to buy a machine in India and then there's no one who can help you when the machine breaks down. So we've got a team of guys here who always go for training and things like that to ensure that whatever we supply into the market, we're able to.
What's the name of the company and where is it based?
It's called RAVTech Solutions.
RAVTech?
Yes, RAVTech, so RAVTECH. We're based in G West Industrial, just near the old Nokia warehouse. So for the oldies of Gabs, they'll know where that is. We're just based around that area.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Let's start talking about the products, because that's the starting point in terms of the the demand and the research. Yeah. Which products are sort of in demand in terms of your research?
Okay, so maybe before we get to the demand side, we start talking about the side where the common side of things. You find that a lot of people are looking at what's the easiest form of business to get into, things like water production and stuff like that. So it's a very full market. I think I probably deal with about 20 clients.
Is it saturated?
In my opinion, I think it's beyond saturated. But then you start looking at the government policies that have been put in place. For example, to say we are now banning the importation of baked goods. Now, not all of us can become bakers, but what are the
is it a temporary suspension or it's a ban?
It's from what I've seen, it seems to be an all right ban. So even companies like Woolworths are moving into trying to get local production done. So for their cakes and muffins and all that stuff to be done here. So there's zero importation of baked goods. So obviously trying to prop up the baking industry. So what you then look at is say either you become a baker or you find what complementary services you can feed into the baking system. So whether it's making icing sugar, whether it's making castor sugar, whether it's making flour, wheat processing.
Just be part of that value chain.
Exactly. So instead of looking and saying, let me go make bread, let me go make rolls, let me go make cake, what can you do to add to that value chain and become part of the process? So this is how people need to start looking at opportunities within the production sector. So whether it's a meat section, whether it's milk, whatever it is, you look where you can fit yourself in the value chain, where there might be less competition or where you can afford to try and fit yourself in and things like that.
So if we were to avoid the waters and the popular ones like bread, where would you see that there's hidden low-hanging fruit? Which other products do you think we should pivot towards?
It's still, bakery is still a big area. So it wouldn't be bread, it would be other confectionery items. Your cakes, your specialized, your gourmet breads and different things like that. Sectors that involve milk, I think we really noticed the Lobatse investment team from America pushing out of Botswana. So there's actually a great shortage of milk
production.
Why are they pushing
out?
Well, that much I would not know. I think that's political, or it's for people who's got a higher pay grade than I would.
You don't have a pay grade for that.
No, I don't. So what then you find is even in the area of milk production, so there is opportunity from that perspective. So you produce milk and then you actually then go package it. So I think in Botswana there's probably maybe 4 or 5 major packages of milk at most, but there's still room to play for smaller guys and things like that. So there's plenty of examples. We could go on all day today with this.
Now that we're trying to get rid of the tariffs, we're trying to go fully continental in terms of the free trade agreement. Where are the opportunities in your judgment?
Locally or
regionally?
Regionally.
Yeah, and even continentally.
Okay, maybe I'll use honey as an example. We're actually discussing this with a fellow angel just the other day. I think it was Aditya. And we're saying that currently you find that people procure honey in Zambia. The cost of production of honey in Botswana is about 100 pula per kg. because there's not enough production, our systems are not yet proper, and all these little things. In Zambia, it's almost 50% of that to procure the same amount of honey, if not less.
Because of lower labor costs, or
it's more, they've got more people producing honey in the central region of Zambia. Then Aditya gave an example to say in Namibia, in Kenya, what a private company came and did. They equipped local farmers around national parks as a form of protecting wildlife and things like that. They equipped them with all the equipment for apiculture, and then they went and purchased that honey from them. So what you've done is you've saved animals, and then you've also created employment and value, and then you off-sell that honey, whether it's in Kenya or overseas and things like that. So you do find that in Botswana we've got we then said, if you look at the right side of the A1, so between here and Francistown, on the right side of the A1, it's literally all bush. That with maybe a triple P of some sort and some planning, you could actually use vast areas of that land and tracts of that land, and in Panamatenga areas where we struggle with poachers and things like that, where it's nice bush. You could actually use such areas to
because that's what you need,
honey.
is nice bush for that.
Exactly. Then you can actually produce quite a lot of honey in Botswana, and let people within those communities benefit from that value chain. So this is just one aspect, and we can actually export this honey, to South Africa, use it here, to Namibia, and things like that. So it's really all about research at the end of the day, to say what is being made, where is it coming from, what can we do here, how can we work together and get things out there.
Does it not amaze you that we still have to import toothpicks?
Yeah,
what can be done about things like that?
Well, the machinery is not that expensive, funny enough. It's just bringing in a bit of the correct type of wood and getting into the retail market, and then voila, literally. Although I'm saying it sounds so simple, there are things that you have to worry about at the back. But the main issue is that I don't think we're exploring our opportunities outside the box that much or enough. We really need to look at some of these opportunities. I have spoken to a young man who's interested in actually doing these toothpicks. Funny enough that you mentioned it. So maybe he'll be the first.
He might come to you for the machinery.
You never know.
Let's talk about setup. Obviously, you're talking about the thing that comes to mind when you set up our pitfalls. Where are the danger areas? Where are the landmines? What do you look out for when you're setting up?
Okay. So most people, when they go purchase machinery, you get into a plant. You say you do a walkabout in a flour plant or a milling plant.
Let's say you go to China, you go to the Canton Fair, all these machineries, and you just go walk around and you pick something.
Yeah. So let's say you pick even just a line that makes water. Let's just say. So you pick a fully automated line. So obviously bottle in, water out at the other end, no human interaction. Fair and fine, that's great. The first thing, when you go back to the research element, the machine you're trying to buy, have you looked at to see if it can match the actual capacities that you want to churn out, say for the local market or for the regional market. So that's the first pitfall. So most people will be sold probably the most expensive machine that's producing, let's say, 10,000 bottles an hour of a particular product. But the market does not demand or require that level of output. So some machines, if you run them below a minimum capacity, you actually damage the machine. And some of them, so you have to run them at a mid-rate. So
you end up getting the maximum one, which is geared to large populations where there's a huge demand.
Exactly.
And you damage it when you bring it here.
Exactly, because the research has not been done. And then other small contingencies, for example, when you purchase machinery, if you look at an invoice, generally it says X works or CIF. So X works obviously means from their factory, you worry about it getting here. CIF is all the way until it gets to here, cost insurance freight. But however, when it arrives here, all the components for this machine there. We've installed plants before for people, when you commission them, and maybe compressors are missing. And one compressor can be up to 160,000, depending on what the compressor is supposed to power. So imagine such a discovery after you spent $1 million pula on a plant. It's arrived and there's missing components. So it's little things like that where you actually need to understand that is it a complete unit that you've been supplied.
And what are the things to look out for? You mentioned CIF.
CIF.
CIF, yeah. So what is the preferable approach?
So CIF mostly that's about the shipment side of things in terms of it getting here.
Yes.
But thereafter, when you're ordering your equipment, you need to ask questions like, listen, does this machine need pressure? In terms of the commissioning of the machine, can I do it myself, or do I need someone with technical ability? So these are things that come at a cost. You'll find that we can bill to, I'll be very honest, we can bill up to 200,000 to install a fully automated line in a plant. This is when you bring your own, and then we actually come and set everything up for you from scratch, from the tanks right down to the to your what you call it, your shrink applicator that wraps those little pallets and things like that. So it's a lot of man hours and a lot of technical expertise required to set all of that up. But so most people then discover that pitfall when the goods get here, and they don't realize that we should have had requested or budgeted, had a contingency for commissioning of plants and things like that.
And you can imagine a situation where you are seeking a loan from SEDA and where you haven't included those things.
Exactly.
And the machine sitting there gathering dust.
Exactly.
You're incurring fees in terms of actually the costs such as rentals and so on and so forth.
Exactly.
So do you then advise someone who's thinking of getting into a manufacturing business to get a consultant from your company first and have them, really drill deep into these matters, these points?
Yeah, see, getting a consultant it always makes sense. Even if you're not going to purchase, say, the machinery, say, via me, and you're going to go and pick up machinery elsewhere. The idea is you get informed and better knowledge of, everything that you actually need for your setup to run quite efficiently. You get proper recommendations, proper information, and things like that. At least you'll go there more armed when you're negotiating for particular units and things like that. It's always important.
One of my companies is involved in sanitation. We're trying to bring in a machine from Italy, which is basically a form of incinerator. We have a problem with clinical waste in this country, where in the context of COVID and so on, there's piles and piles of clinical waste that needs kind of specialized disposal. If I'm faced with such a problem, where would you advise? What's the starting point? What would be the key considerations for me to get this right in terms of picking a machine? Either from Italy, from any other jurisdiction to do this specific job, clinical waste disposal.
Okay, so generally when you look at the machinery, so most machinery is set to work, so our even just like a car. Cars that run in Europe cannot run in Africa as efficiently. Our what you call it, the weather is different, atmospheric ABCs, it's all different. So whatever you purchase from there, they also need to be aware of the conditions it's going to be working under in Botswana, so that they know how to preset a machine before they dispatch it to you. On top of that, you just also need to find out in terms of the kind of waste you're trying to process. Obviously, there's varying types of waste, even within the clinical space. So you then obviously need to advise the team there to say, listen, I'm trying to process this much waste at what rate as well, so they give you the appropriate machine that matches the rate at which you're trying to process it, whether it's an hour or per 8 hour day or 16-hour day or whatever it is. So it just starts there. Also, you're looking at the operational space available. I have a colleague who's he's busy building a brand new milling like a animal feed set up in Botswana, and the factory he had a low roof, so he had to bash a section of the whole factory and raise the roof by about 5 meters, because the machinery at a huge cost, and obviously building some fresh sides and things like that. So the areas that you're going to be operating from, does the machine that you want to purchase actually fit in that space without you incurring additional costs, apart from just procuring and commissioning that machine, and then obviously running that machine with labor and other things involved.
Wow. All right, let's talk about finances and management, taking our conversation further in the context of food production. Okay,
so with the finances, it also goes towards our pitfall side of things. It looks and says, if you're in the food sector, generally the bulk of the intention is to supply food into, say, the retail chain. We can start from that angle. So if you produce, let's say, honey, and you supply it into your Spar, your Pick and Pays, your Sefiranas, Choppies, and the likes. The turnaround time for payment, most people don't know this until they're actually in the thick of
middle
things,
of it, yeah.
is between 15 to 45 days in terms of from the date of your invoice. And the reality is it's closer to 45 than it is to anything below
Sometimes
30.
closer to 60.
Exactly. So which means if say Sefrana orders 6,000 units of honey from you at 100,000 pula, you need to supply that 6,000 units. But what's going to happen is if they run out of stock in the shop within, let's say, 20 days, they're going to order another 6,000 units from you. And you need to have another contingency, 100,000 pula, in order to supply once again, and things like that. So it comes into your finances to say, are you financially equipped to meet, particular...
Have you factored it in your project proposal?
Exactly.
And in your submission to the bank or to SEDA?
Exactly.
That is a key thing.
Yeah. So it's very important for your OPEX from that perspective.
OPEX means? For those
operational expenses.
Yeah, we never make assumptions on this show.
Yes, then from the management side, most people think I now own a business. So I sit at the top of this business and I have people who work for me. It doesn't always work like that. In some cases, even if you spend 1 million pula on a business, you still have to be on the shop floor.
Get your hands dirty.
Exactly, because what then happens is to reduce things like pilferage, and also to ensure that you have better knowledge about how your systems actually work that you have in place. If you are on a daily basis or on a regular basis, on the shop floor, even if it's a big business, in various areas of the business, getting to know what are the pain points that your staff are feeling and things like that. It then helps you better understand when they come with a problem. And even if you sit with a consultant or a consultant tells you this is happening, you have better prior knowledge of what's actually happening on the ground. You can have a better discussion than just picking up a book and signing a check, not actually knowing, because someone can inflate figures and create an additional problem that doesn't exist just because someone sits in an office and never bothers themselves.
You realize you're not asking questions.
Exactly.
Yeah. And now, what would your advice be there at that level? Say somebody, let's look for something as out of the box as, say, you want to manufacture chocolate.
Okay.
It always fascinates me that in Africa we produce so much cocoa in other parts of the world, but we don't produce any chocolate. All the chocolate is from... That goes back to the value chain argument we make. But in terms of getting the right machinery and ensuring that we are able to profitably produce that chocolate, what would you ensure? What would your company do on the issue of finances and management?
Well, what we tend to do is we like to get customers the best deal on the market. So people sometimes go to China, and then you've heard the term that says cheap no good, good no cheap.
Say that again?
Cheap no good, good no cheap.
Yeah.
So I think it's self-explanatory. So sometimes you go to the wrong area and you go and procure machinery that is either
the wrong part of China.
Yeah, well, wrong part of China, even India, South Africa, wherever it is, where they're making this. Even in Italy, there's some inferior products that exist out there. So you might spend either a very little amount of money on the wrong product, or a lot of money as well on the wrong product. I'll use an example that a lot of people tend to like to purchase machine from South Africa because South Africa is a trusted source.
Well, there's also the belief that if there's a problem, you can drive there.
You see, yet at the same time, I have countless examples where machines sold in South Africa actually originated from a plant in India or China. They're the manufacturing powerhouses. So what you find is when the product, obviously same concept in pricing. If something lands, say in Botswana, for 10,000 pula, someone will mark it up by 100% and sell it off at 20,000 pula. What they're saying, then they offer you things like, no, we offer technical support or close, all other promises, part and parcel of this particular deal. So when you then purchase from South Africa, you're actually paying, a massive premium. Yet if you've gone slightly more direct, or work with someone who has, like we've got our own suppliers in in the regions of India, even in South Africa, in China, and all these places. We've got, I think, probably about 30 odd suppliers that we work with.
30 people that you have actually discovered after a lot of research.
Yes. So we've been doing this for about 5 years odd. So we've been building relationships over time, going to expos in India, going to factories, going to expos in China, seeing these things and getting to know these people. And also then obviously we procure some machines sometimes on our ourselves to do some tests and things to ensure that indeed it is a robust machine. Before I can come to you and say, listen, this will actually work for you and things like that. So we then offer at least that kind of comfort in a sense, where we're then saying, if you want to procure machinery, we can help you get that machinery. If you have problems with the machinery, because we've supplied and installed it and we take care of it for you, we are the ones you call for service. So we often operate 24 hours. Even in this COVID time, we do have our essential permits with all the guys. So at midnight call, someone can get up and
it's an essential service.
You see, and push off to a plant and service and fix machinery.
Okay. Looking at the bigger picture, I don't know whether you are part of the Botswana Manufacturers Association. Looking at the bigger picture, you think there's a shift? Do you think that Botswana are beginning to embrace the idea of manufacturing for themselves? Is it slowly changing, or in the 5 years we've been in the space, we manufacture very little as a country?
Yeah, in the last 5 years we had little manufacturing before. Not little in the sense that nothing, but it wasn't as widely appreciated an area. I think at this particular point in time, in terms of manufacturing and packaging, I probably meet at least 5, to 6 new businesses every 2 to 3 months nowadays. Before, you'd really struggle to find some of these guys. Because we normally go around the country every 2 months, the different towns, Khansi, all the little towns every day to see who's doing what there. And we've then realized that we're now discovering that almost in every trip roughly, which is like I said 2 to 3 months, we find at least 6 new players producing something, whether it's sorghum, ginger, milk, powdered milk, whatever it is.
Even soap.
Yes, even soap. So you always find here and there someone propping up trying to do something.
And when you find them, you try to bring them on board.
Yeah, so obviously the first thing, introducing ourselves as a company, letting them know what we do. I think one of the nuggets we'll talk about is our core focus as a business. So obviously the manufacturing support machinery is a larger side of it, but we've got a core area that we focus on. We obviously introduce them to a section of our core section of our business that we focus on, and then we see if we can then provide some advisory in terms of what are they doing now. Are they running manual? Are they running semi-automated, or is it automated? What are their plans? What is their financial muscle? What is their understanding of the market they're trying to reach? Things like that. Then we can try and provide some form of advice to say.
So you more or less offer free consultancy services, don't you?
Yeah, well,
in that regard, to educate the market.
Yeah, you could put it that way. The whole idea is that we can then convert that individual into a customer for us in the long run.
Okay, it's all part of customer acquisition.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I are part of an organization called Angel Network Botswana.
Yes.
You're very active. I'm moderately active. What are you seeing there in terms of the pitches we are receiving, in terms of the young entrepreneurs that are coming forward? Is there any shift towards manufacturing? Is there any impetus in the manufacturing direction?
So far, not as much as I would love to see. I think there's also partly a fear. Recently, we also had this with our new partner BDC. We had their at their business den. We're judging at that with 2 other angels, Maitri and Aditya.
I was there with you. Yeah.
Yes. They had obviously their focus.
Oh yeah, I was thinking of the Stanbic one. You're talking about the BDC one.
The BDC one. Yes.
I was at the Stanbic one. Yeah.
Exactly.
Go ahead.
So they had a focus more on the manufacturing sector in terms of the BDC mandate. To create export value and things like that. So we've already offered our the network's desire to invest in possibly investable businesses, and I think that will result in a greater appearance of manufacturing businesses. I think at this particular point, we probably had maybe 1 or 2 who are actually in production, who are pretty serious. I think we mentor one of the manufacturers in Botswana I think you've seen their product go from strength to strength. When we were at Project 124,
Yes.
she was there. She was also at the BDC Business Den,
Okay.
and hopefully soon she should be sitting in front of the A and B members as well, so that we can see if we can invest in her business. So they are slowly coming up.
So you'd call them what, offshoots or green shoots here and there?
Yeah, exactly.
It's not as much as we would like.
Exactly.
It's heading there.
Yeah.
All right. Location. Let's talk about location in the context of resources, customers, logistics.
Okay.
For us as in the real estate space, location is everything. People say location, location, location.
Exactly.
So in manufacturing, you bring up location in what sense, in what context?
Okay, so when you look at resources, customers, and logistics, if we kick off with our resources, if I am producing, let us say, honey, I'll use that in another example again, and my honey is coming from Zambia, it means I have to ship my honey from the center of Zambia all the way down to Lobatse for production before I can then ship it out to a customer in Maunze. So obviously that's now from a logistical point of view, that's expenses and a mild logistical nightmare. You need to pick where you want to actually place your product based on the resources that you actually need, the core resources that you need for your product. Again, it speaks to customers as well. If you're too far from your customers, in my opinion, I think the best prime location for production in Botswana is Palape. It's central to everything. You've got the south in terms of Gaborone and everything this way. You've got easier access to the north and is it the northeast? Your Kasanis and things like that. So even the resources coming in, it's central. Sending goods out to customers is also very central.
Don't forget access to labor as well. They access you easier from the surrounding areas.
You see. So things like that are very important when you're then setting this up. Because you're then going to say to yourself, if all the resources I need are not, let's say, in Palape, but I'm setting up in Palape, and they're all coming from, say Northern Cape in South Africa, for example, then obviously at that particular point, it makes sense for you to set up much closer to where the resources come in, and then produce and ship things out. And then, like I said again, in terms of your customers, same thing. Who are you trying to supply? In Botswana, I'll be very specific. A lot of people tend to focus on Gaborone. I'm not even going to say, the greater Gaborone area.
Yes.
Everyone thinks the money is in Gaborone. In terms of, let me make water, let me make milk, let me make eggs or produce eggs, layer chickens and things like that, and let me supply gaps. The reality is, if you actually take time to research, there's so much happening up north, above the
radar.
Yeah, above the
below the radar or whatever. Hey.
Yeah. So there's a great need for products. In your Palapes, Piques, Mahalapes, Serule, going north up to Kasane, Maun, everything like that. There's a great need for products out there. But because of positioning, it's so expensive to send something that side. So someone who manufactures something here and we buy for 2 pula, is selling there for maybe 3 pula 50 because they factored in transport. Even fuel is more expensive in Maun because of transport.
Let me challenge you there a little bit, because there was an attempt to create Piqua as a special economic zone because of its location in the north. Did that benefit us in any way? Because that was an attempt to move away from Gaborone as a sort of a government policy.
I think at the beginning, not so much. In recent times, Piqua is buzzing. It's buzzing quite a bit. Before, the Spedu was there, there was obviously its own challenges. But at this juncture,
even with the closure of the mine.
Exactly. Now at this juncture, with more people venturing into manufacturing, and now Spedu, they really have, the mantle to really push. They've brought in a lot of, companies and businesses.
Is it?
Yeah, doing manufacturing. I mean, when BCL closed, someone used an example on Twitter the other day. You could find a house, just like that, empty, ready for rent. Go to Piqua today.
Wow.
You will not find anything. It's just a struggle because more people have moved there. I at least know at least 2 or 3 colleagues of mine who've set up entities in that
So the creation of Spedu and the special economic zone is now beginning to pay dividends.
Yeah, I feel at this particular point in time, it's beginning to pay dividends now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you say location, you say in the context of Botswana, it's well and good to go to where the population is, but it's not necessarily ideal to start in Gaborone.
No, it's not. Yeah, no, it's not. The whole market's not here, and Gaborone is spoiled for choice as well.
It's what?
It's spoiled for choice. So when you decide to try and pick something from Gaborone, we've got so many options. You might struggle to sell it here.
Okay.
But if you go elsewhere where the market is doesn't have as much options, you probably get more traction in those areas as well. So these are things to think about.
I keep talking about my current pet project, if you like, which is the Africa Intercontinental Free Trade Agreement. Has anybody thought in terms of relocating and starting Botswana, starting in large population centers like Abuja, Nairobi, and just have a manufacturer just aggressively go to the market where it is in Africa, take advantage of the Africa Free Trade Agreement and the impetus towards opening up the continent?
To my knowledge, not really. One business I'm associated with. It's got ownership in South Africa. It's got branch and other things here. We've gone as far as opening a place in Ghana, but we've sold rights to an individual in Ghana to use a brand name and set up something in there. But the idea of then going to set up elsewhere, I think a lot of people fear change. I myself, I think it will be known that I'm not in Botswana. So obviously I've left.
You're originally from
Zimbabwe. So it's just next door.
Yeah.
But obviously coming here, new cultures, different things. It's a change.
You have adjusted well.
Yeah. No, I've been here over 10 years now.
Yeah.
So the whole idea is that it's new cultures, new change, and you need to be willing to embrace that change and face whatever comes in that particular area. I did I think I stand to be corrected. I do know also that BDC at some point, because I used to work with them many years ago. So these plans were being developed at that time. So I believe it's still part of their mandate, where they wanted to, the same Botswana was keen on investing in Zimbabwe, Zambia, or Kenya or whatever it is, and you could partner with someone in that particular country. BDC could at that time, I remember, they were willing to partner with you and fund you to go and set up something that side, and things like that. So obviously it's something that you still have to go and do some research on and engage with BDC to say, do you still have this on the cards or not?
Especially now with the borders being opened up.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Policies and regulations internal. Is there a lot of bureaucracy? Is that what you're talking about?
Not bureaucracy. So it goes back to when you talk about management, of your business. So as an entrepreneur, you was a first-time, say, manufacturer. You tend to be almost everything. You're going to try to be an accountant. You're going to try to be your HR. You're going to try your CEO.
At the beginning, you're everything. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's also a good thing for growth. So you know what's happening throughout your business.
Exactly. So the missing point now, most people then fail to acknowledge or realize, is things like small things, hiring practices, disciplinary, actions. If you're with your staff on a daily basis, remember you become like their buddy sometimes, but at some point you have to change the hat. So there always has to be a slight differentiation. Not to say you're the boss, boss leader. Yeah. Not to say you're the boss, but you're a leader in terms of, look, you're willing to work with everybody, but when decisions have to be made, decisions have to be made. And then the other thing that, look, I've gone into a lot of plants in Botswana, and the scariest thing is safety. Food safety is fine in terms of ensuring that whatever gets to your plate or whatever product you use, on your hands and face it's kosher. Yeah. But the idea is the actual safety of the people working on the ground. There's a big gap we need to really address in that area, to say, are people wearing safety shoes? Are people dressed in this particular regalia or whatever it is? That also ensures safety for you and I as people eating or buying whatever food items. Also, me as the worker, if a machine falls, a piece of machine falls on my toe, am I going to lose my my finger, or is something going to splinter and go into my eye? I'm going to lose my eye. Things like that. So safety is a massive consideration. It's a big letdown in a lot of factories within.
So does your
Botswana.
company provide any assistance in that regard, or adversarial services in that connection?
Well, the best we can do is advise. So if we go to a plant ourselves, we generally have, say, our PPE, to ensure we're not working. We also don't harm ourselves. And then obviously, as we see, particular issues here and there, whether it's an extremely dirty workshop or whatever it is, we do try and advise to say, listen, guys, in the interest of food safety, I mean, if the Ministry of Trade or City Council or Bob's walks in here, this
thing is closed down.
Yeah, this is closed down. It's unacceptable. We do obviously try and provide that advice, but I cannot hold a gun to someone's head and say,
what is
you
the
better
usual
do it.
excuse? Cost?
I think costs are a big factor. The pricing of some of the safety material is sometimes it's beyond astronomical. It's you look at the procurement price versus the retail price. It's a
You
big
remind me
gap
of
in there.
thermometers when COVID first hit, the 3,000. Now they've gone down to about 500.
Exactly.
So people take advantage. Price gouging. I don't know what you call it.
Exactly. So things like that. And then the other side of it is insurance. Whether it's your car, whether it's your business, whether it's insurance for your staff. It's very, very important. I mean, we had a staff member in one of our organizations lose a finger, I think sometime last year, in a machine that went and cut it off. And without workers' compensation, it would have been a massive disaster there. So obviously then he's been compensated with his payment and things like that. So you just have to have
Does
all
it
the
go
business
further
partners.
to the point of reskilling that person if they are incapacitated, trying to reskill them in another job or another activity within the same industry? Does it go as far as that when issues of safety are considered?
Well, it would then depend. Obviously, then as a business, it depends on the amount of damage someone has been inflicted on that person. Can they come back to work? Do they have partial mobility, complete mobility, 95%? They've got those ratios of theirs and things like that. So obviously, depending on what capacity they can operate at, you as an organization, I would then advise to say, listen, if they cannot go back to where they were in that role, excuse me, can we repurpose them to something else so that they can continue working within that organization? Yeah.
Somebody watching this may wonder, look, there's so many other things I could get into. What in this field of economic endeavor, where are the benefits? What would you say? Is this a rewarding activity to get into manufacturing? Would you say compared to other, perhaps white-collar activities? Could you help the viewer understand why it's something that they should consider to get into manufacturing?
Okay, so I think probably let's say from a GDP perspective and an employment perspective, it's pretty rewarding because you can help. Generally when you employ one person, they're probably supporting 3-4 other people. So technically you're taking care of about 5 people at that particular point in time. So there's obviously the reduction of unemployment rate in Botswana. Secondly, obviously, would be contribution to the GDP, especially if you can then export that product as well. There's massive potential there. But the reality is, on the ground, I cannot lie. Manufacturing is a big headache. Not to say a headache that cannot be dealt with. For every headache, there's a Panado or something that you can actually use to alleviate the pain. But it's not a journey that you walk into and say, no. I've bought a machine, I've bought raw materials, put them in the machine, let's pump out a product and put it in retail. So all the elements inside, from where you're getting your resource, your raw materials. When you mentioned the cocoa, I've seen guys who I've watched these shows on National Geographic, how it's made and things like that, and they talk about where they actually send cocoa specialists to the the countries where they actually growing the cocoa plants and things like that. And they actually, go and hand pick, by assessing, the particular raw materials to say this one works for what we're trying to do. So there's a whole journey. So from that point, the logistics to get the stuff to you, the machinery you're running, the breakdowns you encounter. So there's joys and sad times in there, right down to the product that comes out. Then from there, you're then worrying about the distribution. Who are we selling the product to? Are we getting paid on time? So there's a lot of elements in there. But in a nutshell, ultimately, it then becomes quite a fulfilling engagement or activity. Because as long as your planning is correct, generally the margins as well for manufacturing companies, especially when you're producing at large scale, are very, very good. A lot of our multinationals that you see, your Procter & Gamble's and companies like that, they own massive brands that are involved in manufacturing. I mean, I got to a point where I was surprised to see a KFC sachet. I think it was about 4 years ago. When I looked at back, it was written made in Egypt, that little tomato sachet. So they have a massive plant there. They produce everything, maybe say for the whole of Africa. They ship from that side and then they push all these things. But obviously these big guys, they enjoy.
And they started small.
At some point,
One day, Ability available. We're still talking about technical capability.
Yes.
We need to talk about what the key considerations are around there.
Exactly.
Can you share on that?
Okay, so it takes us back to what we were speaking about in terms of our setup issues at the beginning, even on the research side. All of it, you then look at and say, the manpower and technical expertise that I have in country, what is it? Step number one. So if you don't have people who are technically able to obviously service and run your machinery, then you start worrying about if you have a breakdown, how do you then solve this particular problem? You find maybe if you have a machine like the guys who make those chips that we buy in those long tubes, those big fat chips.
Yes.
So in those machines, there's big screws in those machines, for example. So those screws tend to break. Now, if you buy one screw, let's say out of South Africa or out of China or India or Italy or wherever, that one screw can cost you up to 20,000 pula. But you can make the same screw locally for about 15 grand. So you don't have to worry about importation, birds not chasing you to say, have you SIPA registered and all the other things. You can speak to somebody locally who can actually produce that, special machinists with a lathe. We can make some of these things to spec and then put into your machine. So the turnaround time is much, much faster, little things like that. So this is what we're talking about when we're saying the technical ability. So it's not just, it's of the technical ability available to you in terms of who can you bring in to help service and assist within the plant. At the same time, the staff that you hire, are they technically capable of handling machinery? We've put machinery in some plants, and after 3 days, you've trained staff, for a day or two. You leave everything running perfect. After 3 days, you hear, they broke this. And then you sit down with the owner and you say, listen, the individual that you've tasked as key to running this machine. We did said his technical ability. We're not really seeing that he's capable, because also it's an assessment we have to make. We
told you that,
to say, listen, can the stuff that you have on the ground, can they actually run this machinery without breaking it? If you're not there for 3 days, they have to start it up. There's warm downs. There's quite a lot of things that they have to do there with certain types of machinery. Are they able to do the correct things and not damage and value property? So we assess some of these things, then we can actually tell you, here, you might have a problem. So then you also have to have the necessary staff in place. So it's not only about hiring, unskilled to semi-skilled labor. So at some points, look into a graduate from, your Butos, UBs, in places where they do some engineering. Just to say, listen, have an on-site technician who's more
knowledgeable and proactive.
Exactly. So that at least he or she, in terms of their learnings, they're able to troubleshoot a few things a bit better. So these are things that you really then look at.
So would your company go to the point of either training such people or recommending institutions that can help with the training?
So in terms of institutions, we tend to obviously get our technicians, straight out of institutions like UB. We tend to favor guys who've done mechanical engineering, electric engineering as well, and then industrial engineering sometimes just depends. I prefer for someone to grow into, not to come with with preconceived ideas, to grow into a role and learn things as you go along. So then obviously our hiring policy is we try and hire young guys, young guys and girls mostly, so that they also go and learn everything. So at least after 3-4 years being in the business, you can then leave. And then whether it's a technician on your own right, consultant or whatever it is. So at the same time, obviously, when we install a machine, we give you full training on that machine. So depending on the complexity required of knowledge required, A training can last an hour up to 3 or 4 days, in some cases even a week, depending on how are the guys on the ground absorbing the information, and then at the same time, how much material do we need to
share.
Yeah, to share as well. But like we said, we always offer calls in terms of support. So obviously we call out support in terms of actually going to site, and then it's fortunate that my phone's on silent. Normally I'll be getting video calls from a site to say we've got this problem, so we try and troubleshoot. With the video call, what's the machine doing? No, it's doing this. Okay, try this, fix this, change the setting, do this and that. And so all the technicians are equipped to be able to do that and also work on site.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in terms of the ability, you have how big is your operation? It sounds to me, just mentioning the number of moving parts there, that look, it must be a massive operation. How many people are employed, and how big is the setup?
So pre-COVID, we had about 6 individuals. So this was exclusive of management. So before we were working with a different individual. So obviously, we separated a partnership.
Yes.
And then to really attack the market, we had to get guys in for sales, guys in for technicians, because literally I was the technical
you're doing everything.
Exactly. So then we had 6, but then we realized over time that we're actually overpaying because there was not enough work, and then but you're still paying salaries and things like that. So we dialed it down to about 3 technical staff.
Okay.
So from the sales aspect, normally that our sales tend to speak for themselves. The machinery that we have, people require. Yes, it does. There is an effort of actually going to, I come to you, Mr. Mogobe, no, you're doing ABC, you need this. We actually form a relationship.
Yes.
But the key area of the relationship is after we've met, what are we then supplying you with?
So the after sales service.
Yes, that's the key. That's the key point. So the technicians are priority more than our sales guys on our end.
Okay.
Yeah. So we had to scale down COVID and other things like that, and all of that. Yeah.
I've had a lady here come and talk about barcoding.
Yes.
And one of the subjects you and I are discussing now is coding machinery that you want us to touch on. Types of machines and why it's important. Let's talk about that.
Okay, so earlier on I mentioned that there's a point, one of our main area of focus in our business is coding machinery. So when people hear coding, they think, Java, Python, C+, and things like that, which is obviously programming for your on your computers and things like that. So in terms of coding, with us, what we're talking about is when you pick up a bottle of water, milk, sugar, bag of mealie meal, anything that you consume on a daily basis, even your soap, your toilet paper, all of that.
Yes.
Generally, what is the one thing that you look for when you buy, say, a loaf of bread? Say you're buying that super loaf, from one of the guys here. You're going to look and say, what date is this bread supposed to expire? So when you talk about coding, it's actually the process of putting that information on a product. So that's very, very important. Because obviously,
it's not just those little lines, barcodes. There's more to it than that.
Yes, there's much more to it. So the barcode really focuses on identifying the product. So one barcode for one product, for one type of product, and that product can be sold all over the world. But when you're producing, let's say, even just that bread. So a guy producing bread today, that the shelf life on that bread is, say, 5 days or 6 days or whatever it is. So on demand, so it's on demand printing. So as soon as you produce the bread, the machine, a barcoding machine, or a batch coding machine, will print, today's manufacturing date on that. It's going to print the future date to say this bread is expiring at this particular point in time. Then it's also going to print a batch number on that particular product. So the whole idea is that obviously to the customer, you want to know when the product I'm buying or consuming is going to expire. So it speaks to the difference between a expiry date and a best before date. So obviously saying a best before date says, listen, even if
I've always confused those two.
So even if the product passes that date, it's just saying it's best to consume it before that date.
It doesn't mean it's expired.
Exactly.
Okay.
But if it says expire, so generally like milk normally should have an expiry date. If you buy fresh milk today, whether it's Parmalat, Sally Dairy, whomever you buy, Prime and everything, the day after that expiry date there, normally that milk goes off. Bread, same thing. So this machines do on-demand printing. So now what you find is, you can imagine if you have a plant, I'll use KBL as an example.
Yeah.
At some point they were producing 20,000 cans of Coke an hour.
Mm.
Now, if you're producing 20,000 cans of Coke, a lot of people in Botswana are still using stamps, on sorghum, because production levels are low. So you can stamp, 100 products in a day or whatever it is. But if you're producing 10,000 units a day, a stamp does not suffice. You want a machine running on a conveyor that can, push, print, and churn things out.
Mm.
So if you've got a plant running, like I said, 20,000 units an hour, you can imagine the kind of machine that you need. And the pace of which products are moving. It's actually, you wear earplugs in KBL, the liquor side, for the glass, because it's quite noisy, even the canning. So it's literally, it's a rattling sound throughout while they're in there. But you can barely see, you can see a shape of the cans normally, but you can, you'll see maybe it's a Windhoek or it's a Castle Light, whatever it is. Yeah. But you won't be able to actually pick. You can never pick that can out of the line when it's in motion, because it's printed, it's moving at such a rate. So you can imagine the machinery that's required to sustain that and things like that. So you've got different kinds of machinery. So you've got, obviously, actually I want to bring one today and have it here on display. At the office, unfortunately. So what you have is what we call a TIJ. So this is a thermal inkjet printer. So it uses a cartridge. It's normally cheaper to purchase, and also it doesn't require any maintenance. So if I sell that machine to you, you will barely call me, to help service that machine. The only thing that for a long time. The only thing that you will need is the consumable that you use to keep running the machine. Then we've got another machine called a CIJ. So normally it's a bigger unit. That one's called a continuous inkjet printer. Now the reason why it's called continuous, it's got a cycling system inside the machine, that the ink continuously cycles within the machine itself, and then when it's told to print, it then spits out the ink. So you'll find a lot of the guys who use, if you've bought a product and you see dots, like on that best before date, that dot matrix printing, they normally use that kind of a printer generally.
You provide that machine?
Yes, we do provide that machine. And then the other option, if you purchase, what do you call this? If you bought the Kit Kat chocolate. Yes. So if you look at that best before expiry date, it looks gold in color. That's actually a laser printer. So they've moved away from this ink machinery to laser machinery. So the idea is...
you also provide those?
Yes. So the laser, it burns. So at the rate of production, it just burns information onto a surface. So the rate that KBL is running at, for example, of 20,000 cans, a laser can probably even do double of that amount within the hour.
Wow.
And things like that. So we provide that machinery as well. And so there's a vast range of
so barcoding is just the minimum?
Yeah, barcoding is the essential minimum to say, listen, you have a product, how do you identify your product? But thereafter, from machinery, from resources, right at the end to say, okay, when the product is going out, have I put the necessary information to ensure that it's acceptable in the market?
So do you think an average entrepreneur knows that, an average manufacturer? What are you doing to educate them?
So obviously we run advertising and things like that on our site just to conscientize the market. We discovered doing this over the last 5 years that a lot of people would go to, say, China or India or South Africa. They would buy a plant. They would get here. And then at the end, when they're now ready to take their product to market, they would go to, say, Ministry of Health and say, yeah, I've done my juice. And then the Ministry of Health will say, okay, where's the best before date? Where's the batch number? Now they start to run around and
reverse engineer this
exactly.
stuff. They do it backwards.
And to find out, listen, what is this thing that they want? Where can I get the machinery? So at the beginning it was a bit of a struggle. Obviously trying to create a bit of knowledge in the market, because people felt we don't need this. I remember last year it was a bit of a relief that Bob's also did make a few decisions to say they're really emphasizing on the need for for the coding machinery or coding of some sort on your product. So obviously people were forced to obviously speak to us a bit more and learn about some of these things more and venture into the requirement of the machinery.
Wow, that's beautiful. I think I'd be remiss if I let you go without giving a shameless pitch on Angel Network Botswana. Explaining what you and I are doing, what the organization is about, and your specific role, because I've been actually referring potential entrepreneurs or would-be entrepreneurs to you who
Yes,
want to
yes.
pitch to me,
Yes.
because I don't have the time, but we have a system for processing these pitches
Okay.
and actually processing these potential entrepreneurs. It's your time to share on Angel Network Botswana.
I feel like Lebo is my PA as well, because she's always sending these guys in my direction.
Yes.
So I do try and help them as best as I can.
Lebu is my PA.
Yes.
We are used to transfer,
Exactly.
to refer, to channel people to you.
Exactly. So my role at Angel Network Botswana, I run communications. So a lot of obviously our internal communication, communication with organizations that we're partnered with, running our social media accounts and things like that. That's generally my role.
Tell them what A and B does.
Okay, so A and B, so it stands for Angel Network Botswana. So it's a group of entrepreneurs from different walks of life within Botswana. Some of our angels are actually outside the country as well, but they're originally from Botswana or have a tie of some sort to the country. They take their personal capital, their personal networks, their personal knowledge, and then they basically impart this onto other budding entrepreneurs who are interested in seeking investment or who require investment. Sometimes some people don't require investment, they actually require mentorship first, or they require access, in every market there's doors to be opened. So they also require networking privileges that some people have cultivated over years. So the long and short process of Angel Network Botswana in terms of applying. So before we have different partners, BIH, Standard, BDC now, and things like that. Where we'd get people being channeled by some of these organizations to us. We've then created our own particular form that has I think it's about maybe 20 to 24 odd questions. That where you provide key information that helps us understand your business. From there, we've got two individuals with massive investment and finance experience. The name of Kitso Lemo and Maitri. Maitri's surname sometimes.
Maitri,
yeah. So you then have people such as Maitri and Kitso who then sit down and actually go through all the applications to see what's if the value that the entrepreneur is promising or saying they deliver will make sense to a panel of angels in terms of pitching. Thereafter, obviously say we have 10 applications, they might be dialed down to say 4 or 5. Then they're taken through a pitch preparation. So I think it takes about 2 to 3 weeks. Where someone actually sits with them from Angel Network Botswana, looks at what they've presented, and then guides them on how to package it into a pitch that can be then delivered to the various angels. From then on, you're invited to obviously a pitch session. Currently under COVID protocol times, it's held virtually. So all the angels obviously are let into a room.
I've been to a couple of those.
And then they do a pitch. You do a pitch thereafter. The angels also then sit up away from you. They decide who is interested in deep diving more with a particular entity that's pitched. And then they're split into what we call like syndicates of sorts. And so a syndicate would then shoot off and then have a meeting with that particular entrepreneur to say, listen, we're looking, tell us more about this, to do due diligence type of activities and things like that before angels can then get into the investment viewpoint. So in a nutshell, that's how it works. The whole process takes between 3 to 6 months. So it always depends. Again, all these angels are doing this voluntarily, so it's out of their own time. So work schedules do differ. So sometimes a pitch could be submitted, say in January, reviewed within January, and invited for a pitch by end of February, beginning of March. In some cases, you could submit in January, and it's only vetted in March, and you're invited in April or May. So people do understand that the organization, as much as we are trying to see as many entrepreneurs as possible and see who can be supported. There are timelines that people have also other things
to do,
to do as well, because they're not sitting at home with stacks of money that's waiting just to throw around. They're actually also cultivating more and more networks.
They're busy professionals as well.
Exactly.
Yeah. If you're a potential entrepreneur, I just suggest you rewind that part about how the Angel Network Botswana system works. We find it very, very helpful. And then you can always get in touch with myself or Fred and take things from there. Now, this is a part of the show, sir, where you get to ask me a question.
Okay. You've mentioned that you've recently considered or are venturing into a form of manufacturing of sorts, but in terms of processing clinical waste. My question to you is, why is it taking you so long to venture into the manufacturing sector?
It's a good question because I had a lot of fascination around real estate. That's where my main source of economic activity is. So what happens over the years as things evolve, you look for opportunities. And I'm with my wife in some of our businesses, including the waste management company. It's called Clean Cities and Towns.
Yes.
I'm sure you've seen the skips, containers, purple in color around town. We've been running that for 15 years.
Okay.
But we see that within the same area, because as we started with strictly just skip containers, then we moved to portable toilets, or we ventured also into portable toilets. We now do some cleaning. We're now looking into clinical waste as part of an expansion. Because I am a big believer that if you're not growing, you are not even stagnating, you're regressing, you're dying.
Yes.
So it's part of the growth impetus. And then the situation around COVID has exposed has made it very clear that the demand is very huge. When government, whether it's government hospitals or whether it's Sekitumila Masire referral hospital, wherever it is, there's demand for disposal of clinical waste. But it's an area which we are new at, and therefore we are making inquiries. We're told that we can get one big machine in Italy. It turns out that machine is overpriced and is not exactly what you need. We're told to go for another machine in India. We're still researching that machine. There are similar machines in China. So we realize that we need an industry expert, perhaps somebody like you, who can really advise us on where the machine is, because they differ vastly in terms of expense, and they differ vastly in terms of what they can do.
Exactly.
So I hope that answers your question, why we are getting into manufacturing now. Or waste disposal, but there's a manufacturing component in there.
It gives me an answer. But I will then say, in terms of procurement areas, Indian machines don't look nice, but they're very strong. Yes.
Generally speaking.
Generally speaking, I'll be very honest. Indian machines, they don't look pretty, but they are very, very strong. They make things to last.
So it's worth investigating further.
Just as a point, even to anybody else who's watching, who decides to go look for machinery.
Maybe we should go deeper there. All right. Look at that camera, sir, and inspire that the entrepreneur. Tell them why you think they should venture into manufacturing and food production, and what advantages lie for them there.
So in a nutshell, I think, as we'd mentioned and touched on before, food security is a massive challenge for not just Botswana, but a lot of countries in the SADC region. So if you can venture to manufacturing, especially of food items, you can become part and parcel of a massively important sector in the economy of the region, and also then venturing into manufacturing speaks to things like job creation. If you want to see someone smiling at the end of every single month, and you want to be proud of the fact that you've made them smile by being able to pay them a salary, they can go home and pay rent, clothe their kids, take their kids to school and things like that. And manufacturing will give you that satisfaction that you need from just from that aspect as well. I think in a nutshell, I can leave it at that.
Thank you very much. How do people get hold of you? Where are you accessible?
So and
your company.
Okay. So I'll start with my company, then I'll go to myself. So we are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn as Ravtech Coding. So RAVTECH and then coding. You can find us there, see our videos and everything, seeing all the machines that we have. And then if you would like to call to make an inquiry, you can call on 311-0605. Or you can email ops, so ops at ravtechcoding.com. And then if you want to get in touch with me directly, I no longer run a personal Facebook profile. I've just got a page that's there. So you can just check for Fred Maunze, so FRED MAUNZ. I'm also on Twitter with the same handle, Instagram and LinkedIn. But my Instagram account might be closed soon. I'm trying to scale down the use of social media now.
Why?
Some of it is just a distraction.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so it's just to maintain a core focus. Also, just stay away from too much eyes, and really focus and drill down on the work. Yeah, because we're expanding quite a bit. Recently, we just opened another business in South Africa, and we're trying to really pressure that through. Yeah.
I had a guest just before you who was arguing very strongly that you can do both. You can be active if you've got a social media manager, and then you focus on your key activity. So, something to think about.
Yeah, true. True. Most socialites would have somebody who runs their social media on their behalf. That's why they say careful who you're tweeting. You might actually be talking to the actual superstar there. Rather than their PA.
That's true.
So,
that's true.
It does happen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Look, you've been a wonderful guest. This is your second time here. This is your home. You're welcome here at Mogobe Nuggets of Wisdom. I think you and I have a deal that every 6 to 7 months you come and share nuggets of wisdom with us. Thank you very much.
No problem.
All right.
Thank you very much, Mogobe.
Cheers.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you.